Welcome to today's interview with enterprise member Andrew Jenkins from ELMAR. Welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week, Andrew.
Oh, yes, it's good to be here.
So you are an enterprise place member, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
How long for?
Well, it's been on and off. I've done it. I've come in a couple of times,
Okay,
but it's sort of probably about a year, maybe.
right. And what kind of support have you had through the enterprise place? How's the journey been?
It's been good, yeah. So I've had sort of support with regards to social enterprise, which is what mine is, a non-profit organisation. So they've got sort of links to other sort of social enterprises in the area. Kate Welsh is someone who helps me sort of very often through the university with regards to sort of anything social enterprise or applying for grants, just general people who would sort of talk to us from environmental groups and things. She's very well connected, and sort of other things with in regards to the university. So obviously the grant, so I could sort of buy me sort of kit and things that I need to expand. So yeah, it's been good.
Good stuff. So in terms of kit, and what was needed then for you to kick this business off?
So it's really just been sort of technological things. So I've bought a laptop. I've
Mhm.
got a branded shirt. Yes, yeah,
Yeah, on brand. I noticed that. Yeah.
yeah. I've got some like microphones and things for making videos and just sort of being able to get this stuff out. I've got sort of advertisement things like budgets for doing advertisements on social media platforms. So it's going to be sort of LinkedIn that we're targeting because that's the sort of the platform that would best suit Elmar, with it being a sort of a business to other businesses that you'd want to, or other sort of professional individuals that you'd want to be in contact with.
Come on and tell all about it, Andrew. You've alluded to Elmar there and who the target market is. Why don't you give us a bit of a background? Where did it start and what does the business do?
Yeah, so ELMAR stands for Ecological Landfill Mining and Recycling. So basically, it came about due to a trip that I had up the coast, not that far from that far from here, just up past Morpeth is a town called Linemouth, um, and I'd gone up there with my fiance, and we were walking along the beach, and I was shocked actually. There's landfill. There's an active landfill mine that's leaking out of the beach there onto the like beach itself. Essentially, there's a landfill that's coming out of the cliffs and nobody knows about it. It's like Britain's got a dirty secret, and it just happens to be landfill sites that are breaching all over the UK. So it was sort of from that I'd initially shocked that something like that would happen in the UK. I went on to do sort of further research and get in contact with other people who are from around, like academia. So Dr. Kate Spencer, someone I've talked to, Adam Reed from Suez, um, Will Mayers from the University of Hull. These are all people who have looked into this kind of stuff. There's also other people who have helped sort of with regards to sort of making maps and things. To research into Dr. Brand as well. He's the one who helped us look into sort of making a map to see where all the landfill sites were, because around the UK, sort of pre 1980s, there wasn't any directives into landfill maintenance or anything like that. So anything that was thrown away, essentially, sort of 1980s and before, was just literally putting a hole in the ground. And the most convenient places for these holes were where the boats were coming in. So anything that was close to the coast, close to waterways, they just dumped it in and didn't think about it. Obviously, back then, they either didn't care or didn't know that this would cause an issue later down the line. So the research that I've looked at, so Dr. Brand and Kate Spencer, um, have said that there's around about 1,200 around the UK of these landfill sites that are just breaching into waterways and onto coastal areas, or will do in the next sort of five-ish years, 5 to 10 years. So it's sort of relatively like sort of it's a short time scale for a lot of things to
Mhm.
start happening. And essentially, um, what I seen when I went up to Linemouth was exactly that. It's a breach of landfill site. So there's all sorts to pawn onto the beach. You've got old wires, trainers, old shoes, carpets, rubber pipes, plastic, all things that if you ever went to the beach, say if you go to the beach like at Roker or you go to Seaburn, you see something that's washed up on the beach and you think, oh, that's a really old bottle. Where's that come from? It's saying like, I don't know, I've seen crisp packets before where it's a designs I've never seen, like old packets of like Tudor crisps, and I'm like, where these come from? They're an old kind of crisps that used to be enjoyed in Newcastle. Or what happened is that essentially they've been washing out of Linemouth landfill site and coming down the coast and being dumped further down on the other sort of beaches and things. So just the concept of that was wild. I could imagine it happening in other countries, and obviously it does happen in other countries. So places like where you'd expect, places that don't have good sanitation. But it was something that I didn't expect in the UK. It felt like I'd just suddenly stepped back to the 1950s with what I'd seen. So I started looking into like what it is that could be done about these things, and obviously I came across the concept of landfill mining.
Okay.
So landfill mining is exactly what it sounds like, where you'd go into a landfill site and you'd dig up everything that's in it and recycle as much as you can. So essentially, you'd dig it up and you'd recycle the metals, so like copper, tin, iron, all of the other sort of chemicals and things that you could get out of the soil. And with the plastics and rubbers, generally in landfill mining, we're trying to sort of find a way to give value to things that are valueless currently. So you think about plastics and rubbers, no one really wants that. That's the main thing that goes into the sort of landfill sites. But we're looking into given sort of plastics and rubbers of value. So we're looking into sort of feasibility studies of the prospect of changing plastics and rubbers into something useful. So like oils or even hydrogen, that you can change sort of plastics and rubbers into hydrogen. So we're currently looking into hopefully getting some sort of feasibility study into the prospect of changing plastics and things into something actually usable and green in hydrogen. So it's an exciting sort of space to work, but at the same time it's sort of harrowing the fact that it's happening.
Yeah. So you know those 1,000 to 1,200 sites, are those all coastal landfill sites, or do this happen inland as well?
It's mainly coastal, so the
Okay.
places that it's going to affect the most is coastal areas. So with regards to climate change, obviously it makes storms and things more likely and flooding more likely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could flood inland, but if it floods inland, it's more than likely not to affect inland landfills as much. It's not to say that there isn't them. There are. There's hundreds and thousands of them. There's a map on my website of where it shows the areas that have landfill or filled land. So back in the day, obviously, as I say, pre 1980, they didn't really say what was happening with these landfill sites. So it could be that it's an old quarry. Say they've dug out the rocks or the coal, and they've filled it back in. Now, like old maps and things would show that it has been a quarry in the past, and when they've gone to survey it again, it's no longer like a quarry, it's filled. So they put it down as filled land. So some of this can be just filled in with other soils and things, debris, sort of inert things that wouldn't cause an ecological problem. And some of them will be filled in with other landfills because they've just gone as oh, this is a great opportunity. There's a hole in the ground. We'll just fill it with
Yeah.
everything we don't want. So it's filled land essentially, and they've got it sort of it's everywhere. So it's England, Wales, and Scotland are the maps that I've managed to sort of find and compile, and I've been able to sort of put them together to see like what the sort of the prospect of these issues are. So yeah, the as I say, with Linemouth is a sort of a rarity in the sort of scheme of all the landfill sites because the council's actually stepping in to remediate the site, which isn't something that would has happened sort of anywhere else. So there's sort of other ones that have been reported on and reported on the news recently. So places in Cumbria, somewhere called South Wanley Island, is somewhere that's dropping into the sort of sea. There's one in the Tilbury in London. There's quite a lot in London, as you'd expect with it being a big city. There's a lot of waste that has been dumped there. But these are ones that are sort of actively dumping things into the water that people know about. So it's not just sort of, obviously plastics and rubbers are bad enough. You can see them and you know it's bad. But there's one in Tilbury that is dumping sort of chemicals as well. So things like cadmium and lead and arsenic, things that used to be in like car batteries, and is obviously been leaching out because of like coastal flooding or like bad storms. It's obviously just washing them out into the Thames essentially. So yeah, it's something that you can't really bury your head in the sand about it for very much longer, really.
So in terms of ELMAR then, Andrew, are you a consultant? Is that how you make your money? Like, what does the business actually do?
So we are currently looking into the prospect of getting sort of landfill mining up and running. So in the UK, there isn't any landfill mining. There isn't any sort of landfill mining companies at all, because it's not going to be a profitable industry to begin with, and that's the sort of the concept of it. So in other places where sort of where environmental like laws and regulations aren't as stringent, so places like India, landfill mining is quite abundant, because what they can do with the plastic is they can dig it up and they can burn it, usually in cement factories, so they can make it green. I mean, I suppose it isn't. It's getting rid of a problem, but it's sort of creating another one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they're doing in other countries like that. So like like India, Malaysia, it's kind of becoming a big thing. But places like the European Union, America, obviously you've got a lot of waste in landfill sites, but you've got a lot more like restrictions on environmental protections, which is a good thing, but also makes it so that it makes landfills themselves unpredictably profitable. So essentially what it is that landfills themselves are extremely valuable, but if it's going to cost a lot of money to get all the stuff out of it, you're not going to make any money. So I'll give you an example. When they've done a study on a couple of landfill sites sort of just in the UK, so these are the ones that are issue ones, so the ones that are sort of pre-1980. People used to throw out things like that are valuable now. So people used to throw out copper, steel, aluminium, tin, just used to go in the bin. They didn't recycle it. So a lot of these things are valuable in the landfill site. So any sort of given landfill itself, it can be worth up to sort of £500 million. So thinking how many landfills there are in the UK, that's a lot of money. But if it's going to cost, I don't know, £502 million to dig it out, then suddenly it's not worth digging it out, isn't it? So it's an inherently risky thing, because they don't know what's in the landfill sites, because it's such an issue. So it's something that businesses won't invest in until there's a sort of a concept or something similar, where they know they can go into it and like reasonably make a profit, or more than likely make a profit than not, which obviously isn't something that's happening now. Every sort of study that you can read about sort of landfill mining, I know Stuart Wagfield, who's the lead on landfill mining in Cranfield University, has written a lot of papers on it. He's obviously very interested, and he wants to make a success of it. But all of the papers sort of end in the conclusion that currently landfill mining is going to be unprofitable, and currently it's not going to work. But that's kind of not what ELMAR is about. So ELMAR is about sort of sorting the problem because it needs to be sorted. It's that councils will eventually need to do something about these sites. So, for example, at Northumberland County Council's doing something about theirs, but it's going to cost them a lot of money. Sort of around sort of £7 million, I think, is what they've earmarked for remediation of the landfill site. So the idea of ELMAR is that you could go in and make it cheaper for them. So if you can go in and you can separate out sort of valuable things like copper or steel and sell them on, you could make it cheaper for the council, while advancing the field of landfill mining without having to sort of go all out with sort of risk. If it needs to be done, then you might as well try and save the council's money by recycling sort of aspect of the site that needs to be remediated, essentially.
Yeah. So have you got this proof of concept, then, Andrew? Have you worked with anybody yet? Is this just something you're trying to get off the ground? Or, what stage are you at with the business?
So it's just getting off the ground at the minute. Yeah, so it's very new technologically, and obviously there's interest in it. So there's interest from sort of obviously the big sort of waste management firms. So they all have sort of sites that they have to look after they've sort of run out of usefulness, they've run out of space in it. So if you can sort of mine a landfill so successfully and have value in it, then it creates space for more landfill, or it creates more sort of resource for them to sell. So it is sort of in the interest of business, but obviously, as I say, it's a risky place for them to be. So it's not necessarily that they're uninterested in it, but they're sort of cautious
Yeah.
on moving on to something sort of so different, especially if since it's never been done. It's never been done with historical landfill sites before, and it's never been done in the UK. So it's kind of it's new ground essentially. So yeah, as it stands, it's just we're looking into sort of researching it. We're trying to get sort of small scale sort of case studies to see what the sort of scope is of it, or using other places that are doing it currently as a sort of a feasibility study. So, for example, we're hoping to work with Northumberland County Council to look into their like remediation of Linemouth, which is hopefully going to start in the next sort of few months.
So what does the day-to-day look like then, Andrew? If this business is kind of just getting off the ground, how in terms of setting it up, putting process in place, networking, cash flows, what's your thoughts on that?
It's very much sort of it's very much sort of voluntary at the minute. It's
Okay.
not sort of out and out making money. But that's not why I'm wanting to do it. Obviously, if people are sort of wanting to change the way things go, then it's not always going to make money to begin with, is it? So, in essence, I'm doing it because I feel like it's the right thing to do, and no one else is doing it. And if that's the case, and I have to do it as I'm doing it now, then that's how I'm going to do it. So it's not always sort of about sort of making money in the sort of in the short term. I mean, hopefully it'll be something that I can make money out of the long term. But even if it isn't, I'm enjoying sort of doing what I'm doing. The networking is sort of I get to talk to loads of interesting people, sort of academics. I get to sort of speak to people who are also sort of passionate in the field, sort of people from countries that I would never have spoken to before. So I've spoken to people sort of from like Sierra Leone and Malaysia and places like that. So it's you speak to people that you would normally never have been in contact with to see what their views are on things like this. So it's also just a sort of a fascinating world of the issue of sort of plastic waste in general. You don't realize sort of how bad it is sort of in other places in the world until you start looking into it sort of thoroughly. So obviously they've got huge problems with waste all over the world. And again, if through the feasibility studies that we're looking into doing, if we can give waste value, sort of plastic waste value, or find better ways of recycling it. So, for example, chemical recycling. So again, changing it into a different substance other than plastic. It gives sort of other places that are currently just openly burning it, which is contributing to climate change or making it worse. It gives them something that they can then pursue as well. So it's something that could have far-reaching consequences in a positive way.
So is this an education piece for you then, Andrew, to reach out to the people who kind of need to know, and then you're sort of demonstrating and talking through the kind of art of the possible?
Yeah. It's sort of a very sort of I think that the more that you raise the profile of it, the better it's going to be for people looking into solutions. So, for example, as I said, the councils will have to deal with these issues sooner or later. And then if it is that you can get sort of at least sort of one or two councils to have a go of making it an education point where you can say, we can change landfills and how this isn't the end for a piece of rubbish, you can change it into something useful, or it can become something else. Hopefully, it would mean that you can then look through the whole process of sort of recycling and plastic waste in a different light. Obviously, we do need to reduce and reuse, but obviously, you can also say that we're going to clean up what's been left before, and sort of tackle it from both ends, rather than just saying what's happened in the past has to be left in the past, because obviously that's not the case. The past is catching up with us, and
Yeah.
obviously we can see that in everything that happens.
So in terms of your plans, then, do you have something sort of in place for the business? If you give yourself any metrics that you know you want to be able to work with 2 councils by end of the year, or how are you doing it?
So with regards to sort of any metrics and things, I haven't really thought about it. I suppose it's, with it being sort of such a new concept, it isn't something that you can put a metric on straight away. It would be nice to work with 2 councils by the end of the year, but I doubt it would happen.
Yeah. So in terms of some of the support that you've received then, or maybe some of the support that you're looking to receive, how's that been for you?
So yeah, I've been talking to sort of universities and things
Yeah.
with regards to sort of, as I say, research. Universities are generally sort of interested in the initial research into it, feasibility studies and case studies. As I say, the academics are generally a lot more interested. So universities have sort of been helping with regards to research and things, and I think it's mainly sort of the grants and things that we looking to sort of apply for through government schemes. So there's been some that are coming out recently, like low carbon hydrogen supply kind of schemes that the government are very sort of hot on at the minute. Are things that we are looking to apply for. Obviously, we need to get sort of teams in place. So we're working with like Newcastle University, for example, who have sort of experts in the gasification of plastics, and they think that sort of through feasibility studies we might be able to make it something that's you can change sort of, as I say, plastics into something like hydrogen. So the concept of it is that if we can sort of secure a sort of a grant or something similar, we'd be able to then sort of prove that we can make plastic have sort of more of a value than just throwing it in the bin, and it can become something useful that we'll be able to use in the future without sort of causing issues with sort of carbon dioxide, for example, or creating more emissions, like it is with sort of, if you think about blue hydrogen, which is just sort of taking methane and blasting it with sort of steam, and it creates hydrogen. Yet you've got hydrogen, but you've also created a lot more CO2, which isn't that's not the point of what hydrogen was there to sort of, so you don't get CO2. That's the idea behind sort of hydrogen, the hydrogen sort of bubble essentially. So if you're creating loads of CO2 to create hydrogen, it's kind of defeating the point.
So in terms of yourself, Andrew, and recently launching this, if somebody was watching this and they had an idea and they were thinking about launching, have you got any advice for
them? Just contact as many people as you can. If you're interested in the subject, you'll I mean, the power of the internet is a vast array of just anything, really. So as soon as you can find like studies that you're interested in, or even like articles or people that have posted things that you think, that is something that I am interested in, you can go and sort of pursue. I mean, the saying "shy Ben's getting out" is definitely something that applies to anything like this. So you've got to go out and you've got to ask, you've got to go and talk to people. You've got to go and sort of approach businesses and say, like, is this something that you'd be interested in? Would you want to sort of collaborate at some point with it? And you'll find that there's a lot of people and a lot of businesses that are more likely to say yes than no. And it's just about going out and asking them. Obviously, asking and talking to people is the sort of the scariest part. Essentially, it's sort of the fear of failure is sort of killed more dreams than sort of failure itself has ever killed, I suppose. Is a good saying. It's one of them things. So if you can go out and sort of do and talk to people. It's yeah. I mean, LinkedIn, for example, is a great resource for talking to sort of experts in that field. So if you have if you've found like an academic or someone who's written an interesting article, if you find them on LinkedIn and you drop them a message, the chances of them dropping you a message back and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm interested in talking to you," and then that's how you sort of can build up a network. I didn't realize sort of how useful that places like LinkedIn could be. I mean, even Twitter. I wouldn't say Facebook necessarily, unless you're sort of selling things that are sort of ordinary people want to have or want. So if you going into sort of an industry like I'm in, where it's not necessarily that people would be wanting to, I mean, yeah, they might be interested in it, yeah, they might watch a video about it, but it's not necessarily that they'd be involved in it. Whereas if you went onto something like Twitter, you'll find a lot of people that are interested in activists or something like that, who'd be interested in getting in touch or even talked about it. You can find that you can create a lot of conversations on platforms where sort of you can collaborate with other people who are interested in the same fields you are.
Excellent. Well, listen, this is going to be one to watch, Andrew. So would you agree to come back on maybe in a year and see how things are going?
Oh yeah, if you want. If I'm not too busy.
Yeah, you could be very busy, I tell you. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for sharing that really interesting business, and I wish you all the best.
Oh, thanks very much.